think I just went live.
Just went live.
How you like that, man? I have everything set up, ready to go. We're
Nice
1 minute
work.
early. Has the podcast ever been 1 minute early?
No, it's never been anything early.
Well, new year, new us.
Well done. No one's gonna know what to do. They're gonna be like, "What?
Well, yeah.
It's on early."
Matt actually posted in the fellowship, the Duck Gun, asking when the podcast was going to start. So
I
I
saw
should
that.
probably make an announcement podcast or that we moved it to the 9 o'clock officially. Well, we're still doing tester. We got to see how it works for guests. But what's going on, Wild Man, Modern Wild Man? Thanks for joining
Sweet.
us. KS Duck Hunting 84. Howdy, fellas. Thanks for joining us for another live stream on the Duck Gun podcast. We're hot off the heels of an awesome weekend. Don't want to get into all the details yet. Let's give a little bit for the links to get pushed out and the podcast to get rolling, and we'll start recording. What's up?
Well, Modern Wild Man, he and I have been talking about getting in a hunt together for a long time, and finally we did this year. And I'm hoping we have more hunts in the future. He is really, really fun to hunt with, and his son was on his first hunting season this year, and what a cool little kid. And he is really, really nice guys.
Awesome. That's awesome. What's up, Top Water Dreaming? Yeah, I've had a little bit of chipping on mine as well. But overall, I really do love the A5s.
Links are officially out. I like that picture you used. I thought that was a cool picture.
Thanks. Yeah, it was pretty unique. What's up, Jim? Thanks for joining us. Let's go ahead and start recording. So here we go. Alrighty, folks, we are back and ready to jump into the podcast. First off, I got to give a big thanks out to Elliot for having me out for the weekend. I mean, I don't think I thanked you in person while I was there, but it was so awesome to come out there and hang out with you and everybody from your family. Super enjoyable to be with. Even I know Aiden's kind of like an honorary member of your family at this point, but even
Yeah.
having him around, he was awesome too. And yeah, it was just hunting aside, it was just a pleasure to be around your family and yourself. And one other thing too, I didn't get to thank your wife because she wasn't around. But right when I went to leave, went to grab, she'd packed a lunch in a sack for all of your kids for school, and I haven't had a lunch
And
in a
you took
sack.
them all? You took all the lunches and
I took
ran?
all of them and ran right before I left. But no, everybody was gone, and so I went to grab mine and grabbed it out of the fridge, and it had a. She drew with a Sharpie my face on the bag. It cracked me up, but it was just.
I
did you
didn't
see
know
it?
that.
I took a picture of it. I'll send it to you. It was pretty funny. Um, but yeah,
Did
as
it
soon
have a
as
backwards hat on?
it did, backwards hat and a much better beard than I have. So
Yeah, you got to send that to me. I got to see that. She never told me.
yeah, it cracked me up when I saw it. But I haven't had a lunch in a sack in a long time. But that was just awesome as well. So you have to tell her thanks for me.
I'll do that. She is a wonderful woman. I am extremely, extremely blessed. She's always doing little things like that, making lunches and sending me stuff on hunts. And just the fact that she puts up with all of this waterfowl obsession and every Wednesday night and everything. And she does it with a smile. It's not like a backhand at all, tolerate it, but kind of make little jabs at you. She wholeheartedly knows that it's a part of who I am. And when I have joy from it, she has joy from it. It's funny because if I come back and I've had a really bad day, just like a really awful time, and she's like, I do not want to hear you're gone this whole time. And you're back frustrated and have had a bad day. So now I try. The one thing I try to do is not, if I've had a miserable day, not relay that to her. She's a good one.
Awesome. Definitely agree with you on that. But yeah, I guess let's go ahead and start from the beginning. of the whole weekend. So we've been planning this out for a while. Well, I mean, you'd been mentioning it. Hey, you should come out, and it wasn't really kind of official till just a few weeks ago. I didn't know if I'd be able to make the trip, but you invited me out there, and we tried to get my wife to come along as well, but work um, responsibilities, adulting, that kept her from getting to take the trip with me this time around. So that was a little bit of unfortunate, but hopefully next time she'll be able to come too, because the ladies like to hang out while we're hunting. But ended up making the trip and heading out, and just from the start, honestly, it was a a little bit of a struggle. Trying to get out of work, I get out a little late. The Kansas license, I had to renew mine, and their online system was broken. So then I'm like, all right, well, as soon as I get to Kansas, I'm gonna stop at the closest Walmart and buy my license. And I stopped like 5 miles short of the border in Missouri. Still, I guess I should know my geography better, but I was just north of Kansas City, and I thought when I'm looking at the map that I was in Kansas because of that, but I was still in Missouri. So I wasted time with those guys, and I had like 4 people trying to help me to buy a license, and none of them knew that I couldn't buy a Kansas license in Missouri. So they said they could if I was from Kansas, but since I was from Indiana, it wouldn't work. So, yeah.
They can really sell you a Kansas license if you're a resident of Kansas and Missouri?
I think so. That's what they
I
said.
bet they don't. I bet they don't know what they're talking about.
Maybe.
I'm calling Walmart worker ignorance on that one.
What do you call it the first time?
I just misspoke. Walmart worker ignorance. Just kind of slurred a word.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So by the time I got there, man, it was like 11-hour plus fiasco. So it was a lot of fun. I drove through a bunch of snow and weather my way, and then snow through Missouri. But finally, I got there. It was midnight, and you guys were asleep, and the plan was to get up at 2. So
Yeah, yeah. When you said you're going to be there at 12, because I was fully expecting to stay up till you got there, and then we had to finalize all the loading of everything and all that. And when you said 12, I went into a panic because I'm like, we may not be to bed till 12:30. That's an hour and a half sleep, and I'm thinking how that's going to affect my whole weekend and
oh
my
yeah,
Monday at work. So I was really stressing out bad. I was just like, this is going to tumble my whole weekend. And my wife stepped up. It was like 10:15 at that point. She's like, listen, just go to bed. I'll greet him. I'll stay up till 12. See, I mean, she's awesome. Oh my gosh. But if I had only gotten an hour and a half sleep that first night, I would have really been hurting.
yeah, yeah. Well, it was yeah. The original plan was for me to be there like between 8:30 and 9. And then, like if my Kansas license just would have worked online, I wouldn't have had to drive through weather. I would have been there, right at those times. But when you have to add on all that extra time, you know, which I guess, I try to cut it close because you only have so many days you can take off of work per year. But when you have everything that can go wrong, you know, I might as well just plan to show up at 2 and jump in your truck, right?
I guess.
So, honestly, I literally, it was weird because I got there, I got all my stuff thrown in your truck, everything packed up, and I think I got it, pretty well organized before we even went because, um, you know, I literally woke up. It was weird. I woke up like a minute before my alarm clock went off, and I was like wide awake, ready to go. And who would have thought, after it was like an hour and 50 minutes of sleep. I'm just like, it didn't affect me at all till about 3 o'clock the next day or whatever. But
So what time were you actually asleep by?
I mean, I don't know. I didn't really look. I don't think it was after midnight. So
Yeah.
I think it was just after midnight. So, um, I almost got 2 hours of sleep.
Yikes. Well, we had to get up that early because I was hoping we wouldn't have to get up that early. But I scouted the whole after from about 10 o'clock till about sundown. My dad and I scouted on Friday, and I was pretty sure that we were going to be on the river. And right at the end, I found what I thought was about 500 mallards on this one little inflow creek as it came into the river, and you could see it from the bridge. So I'm like, that is where we need to be. And if we're going to be first there, we got to get up early. Because if we didn't have birds located, we'll get up, put the boat on, and just find a bunch of birds on the river and then set up there. That's really the best way to do it if you don't know. On the river like that, you can't just go and throw out decoys. It just doesn't work unless you're just extremely lucky. You've got to go and find where the birds want to be on that day and then set up there. So knowing that we had all those birds located, just like, we just got to get up. We got to get up at 2. That's what we got to do.
Yep. And I mean, you were right, because we got there and we got to the boat launch, and first thing I had to do was, um, I mean, when you go on the road, you got to eat stuff that's outside your usual diet, and you're. I mean, I feel like my poop schedule is pretty regimented as far as like what I'm like, like what time of day. It's like always around the same time of day, once a day. Just go, you do your business, and that's kind of how it was. But you get on the road and you buy a couple Slim Jims, and then your next stop you buy some coffee and like Columbia roast coffee, and maybe I don't even know, but you get it. You're eating all these things that are outside of your regular diet. So we get out to the boat launch. Actually, it was before that, and we're like bouncing along the road. I'm like, oh, like I had to go so bad, and I'm just like praying I make it to the boat launch, and and we got there. And so first thing I did is I ran out there before I got any of my other clothes on, and um, there was a light pole there, and I used that as a backrest, and I was doing like wall squats on it, and did my business real quick. And meantime, you guys were getting the boat ready, but somebody actually got there right before we got in, unfortunately.
They got to the ramp before we put our boat on.
Yep. So we were there
beat
first.
them by like 15 minutes. Yeah, we beat them by like 15 minutes. And so as Jordan's out taking care of his business, this guy gets out of his truck, and typically in that type of situation, I'll just engage these guys right off the bat and be friendly and talk to them, let them know where we're going, and so this guy comes up to me, a fairly young guy, seems really nice and everything, and we get talking. It turns out we're going to the exact same spot, and he's like, "Can you do me a favor?" He's like, "I got my 6-year-old with me, and and so we get talking and everything, and I'm like, well, why don't you just go ahead and come hunt with us?" I mean, he had his little 6-year-old with him and everything. Now, he didn't mention that he also had his girlfriend with him. And I don't know if that was strategic for him to leave that piece of information out or what, because then we put our boat on, he put on his boat, and we got there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I left my son and my girlfriend in the truck." I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize she had a girlfriend." I mean, not that it would have changed anything. I still would have asked him to hunt with us, but now our party of 3 turned into 6. So we set up all the decoys and everything, and Jordan made the most fantastic burritos. I mean, these things were massive logs of burrito there in the morning for us. So it was a great start. Except I'd say I was very disappointed that we were going to be hunting with a guy and his girlfriend and a 6-year-old. I was really looking forward to just be Jordan and Aiden and I. So I was disappointed by that, but it wasn't ruining my morning completely or anything. It was a little bit of a disappointment, but I'm sure he was disappointed too. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got his girlfriend and his son, so we were just trying to make the best of it, best of a bad situation. And he could have beat us in there because his boat was so fast that had we not even talked to him, he could have just gone around us and beat us there and claimed the spot.
Yeah, and he was definitely, like you said, he was a super nice guy, and
Yeah.
everybody wants to get out there and get on the ducks, and you definitely did the right thing about being courteous and kind and grouping up on that. But we did have some struggles with our hide. We tried getting in the logs, and I was sitting right on the end of it. There was a bunch of deadfall kind of jammed up together there. And I was sitting on the very edge of it, and I kept seeing the birds just flare. And there were so many birds. And I'm like, they're 100% flaring on me. And I tucked in further with everybody else and took Chief in there as well, got rid of the mow marsh and put it behind it. And after that, it felt like we finished a couple more a little bit cleaner. But it still wasn't every one. We had some birds flaring. And that's just part of hunting. Sometimes you're just not getting your setup right, and um, it's. I can't remember if you said this or who said this or if I said this, but kind of to reiterate that, it seems like it's 90% of the time. If you see them flare, it's you. It's not really anything else. It's just they're seeing something they don't like. They might not see it's you, but they see something that they don't like, some movement, something that's not natural, and that's just what we were kind of having all morning.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've had all these conversations about spinners flaring ducks and pulling the spinners and all of that. But fact is, I've pulled the spinners lots of times, and this season it was effective pulling them a couple times. But the number of times in which I've said or we've said, "Hey, it's us. Let's back way off," or "Let's just hunt one guy at a time and back the rest of them off." Those changes have been effective. I mean, I don't have them counting, so I'm just throwing out a fictional number. It seems like those have been effective about 90% of the time. When you find like, okay, we're going to move ourselves way back, or we're just going to lay one guy out at a time, those changes are almost always effective. And in the end, that's basically what happened in this situation too. We fought these birds flaring off us all morning. It wasn't until, what do you think, about 12:30 that we kind of figured it out?
I think it was after that because talking through the iterations of our setup, and we changed decoys and all that, and I don't think anything with the decoys really helped. We just kind of were just trying anything, and it's if one bird flares, the next one's most likely going to flare, and if that one flares, and then especially the third one after that, it's like once you're doing that and just sitting there, like you're literally just going to sit there and see the same thing over and over. So I'm always for making changes as quick as you can, as many changes as you can. Do them as quick as you can. Get out of the decoys and get back in the blind. And that's just what we had to do. But the different iterations of it, we had our first setup. We were all stretched along at 6 of us, or actually 5 of us, and Aiden was up filming above the log jam. And then we moved me in the blind, and that kind of helped, but sometimes they'd still see me, or see us, I should say. And then from there, we tried being just behind the logs, and we shot another one. And I think that was just by coincidence because we were all out of the logs, pushed back behind it, getting ready to set up the A-frame. And then we set up the A-frame on the sandbar, and we finished a goose right up, literally like 15 yards from us. But then we had ducks flaring on us too, and I think the A-frame might have been just not brushed enough to be kind of wide out in the open like that. So then our last kind of option was to get up on top of the bank, and so we got up on top of the bank, and sure enough, I think that you might have been right about 12:30, and sure enough, the first 2 finished right there, and
Yeah.
and
And the
yeah, go ahead.
the bad thing about it is Jim, who we're calling Jimbo all day, he wanted to make this move right off the bat. And he wanted to kind of get up on the bank. And I got out in the decoys and I looked up on the bank and I'm like, there's just no cover over there. And I just imagined all 6 of us sitting up along this bank up high. It was a tall bank, tall, like what, 15-yard high? I mean, it was a tall bank. And there's trees up there and whatnot. And so I'm just looking up there and I'm thinking, there is no way that's going to work. There's no way that's going to work. And so I kind of got a little assertive. I did not want to make that move. And that was the first move that Jimbo had suggested. And so I'm fighting against this all day long, moving up there on like that. And finally, at the end, after I was just ready to leave, I mean, we were laying out on that sandbar in A-frame, and I was laying way back with Aiden. And this pair just comes like they're gonna float right in, and they flare. And I'm just like, okay, I'm about ready to wave the white flag. And one more time, Jimbo's like, come on. And Jordan's been kind of a proponent of going up there as well. And he's like, let's just try it. I'm like, all right, whatever, screw it. Let's just try it. I had zero confidence it was going to work. And we get up there, and sure enough, the first 2, one was semi did it, and then one just like we shot him a yard off the water. And so had we made that move like right off the bat, I don't know how many we would have shot. We had shot a bunch
We shot our
because
limit.
we had plenty of ducks work. I don't know. I don't know if we shot our limit. but we would have shot a bunch of if that was the absolute answer, which it appears as though that it was.
Yeah.
Um,
And
we would
and
have
I
shot a
found
bunch of
it.
birds.
It's like you said. I was definitely a proponent of moving up there. I mean, not right away, but after we made a couple moves in the brush and it didn't work, I was like, yeah, let's try that. It seems like a good idea. And honestly, it's something that I've learned from you, which I found it was kind of odd to me that you didn't want to go up on the bank because there's been, I haven't hunted with you that many times, but there's been multiple times where your suggestion pretty quick off was to move back, and that's always seemed to work really well. And I've kind of incorporated that into my decision making when I hunt. One of the first things I always say is, "Hey, let's move back." If you're 20 yards away from the bank, and now your bird's finished in your 10 yards away from the bank decoys, and you're shooting birds at 30 yards opposed to shooting birds that aren't feet down passing at 40 yards, well, that's a net gain. So I've kind of always had that school of thought, like, hey, let's move back. I shouldn't say always.
Yeah.
In the recent years, I've been doing that more. So I found that kind of odd that you didn't want to. So I guess you've kind of explained it, the reasoning
I'll
for not.
explain it. Well, let me give a more detailed
Okay, yeah.
explanation to it. So moving back farther is different than moving up and silhouetting yourself. So in my thinking, just the week before when we were on those hunts, what we were using that was extremely effective was we were up against a mud bank, just laying back into the bank. And if you do that and the sun is right, you're shadowed and you basically don't have to have anything in front of you. But up on that tall bank, there was nothing behind us. So when you're on a bank like that and there's nothing behind you, every single movement that you make is silhouetted. If you move your hand, there's sky behind you. Now, if the ducks are above us and looking straight down, that could be different. But this is a pretty tall bank line. And the week before, as we were boating out, there was these guys that were hunting about 300 yards down from us. And there was one guy that was out in the decoys, and there was another guy that was up on the bank. And the guy up on the bank, I looked over and I could see just his silhouette moving around. The guy that was down the decoys, as he walked up onto the shore, I couldn't hardly see him. So that cemented in my mind. I was thinking, man, those guys should not be up on the bank like that because they're just silhouetted. I've had other experiences where I've been trying to stalk turkeys, and if you allow yourself to get silhouetted, your movements become really pronounced. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I was out in the decoys, when we talked about that move and I looked up there, I just, all those instances were popping into my head of being silhouetted. And I mean, there was no cover in there. Literally, when we were up there, it was just like sitting with my legs dangling over the bank with a few little vines around. But it was just like I felt completely uncovered. The other reason is, now, before I say this, Jumbo was not a skybuster. I don't consider him to be that. That being said, his range certainly extends. The shots he likes to shoot certainly extend farther than the ones I like to shoot. My fear was, as we were having problems getting these birds to land and they were flaring, some of our shots that we were wanting to take and Jim was wanting to take were outside of my comfort zone, to where there was multiple birds starting to be wounded, that were just flying away with steel in them. And I did not want to get into a situation up on that bank that, now that we're 30 yards off well, it was this, we didn't have a spinning at the time, but 30 yards off the kill zone, if they continue to flare from up there, I was really afraid the shot selection was going to start being 50, 55 yards. And I was worried about that as well. So that kind of all played into my decision making as far as what I wanted.
Mm. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Silhouettings can be an issue. I think the thing that might have saved us up on that bank, though, is like you said, there was a lot of vines there, and then it was actually a tree line. So I don't know if the birds just assumed that we were like the base of trees or what. So, but it ended up working, and like you said, we had some birds come in, but at that point, it was so far in the day there just wasn't a lot of um, duck action happening. So definitely, all in all, it was a fun hunt. Definitely frustrating to see that number of birds though, and not being able to figure it out till it seemed like it was almost too late. But I shot more ducks in Kansas than I could have in Indiana.
Yeah, and we ended up the day with what, 6 or 7 mallards and a goose. Isn't that about what it was?
Yep. Yeah, it was six. I think it was six. mallards, all greenheads, and then one goose.
And then we lost one. So we dropped 7, lost 1,
Y-
and then the goose. And to go back to the hide a little bit, here was Jim's explanation. Now this guy was from Minnesota, and he hunts, over 50 days a year. So he's got a lot of experience. He's fairly young, but he does have quite a bit of experience. And I think this is the only thing that makes sense to me, what he said, as to why we could get away being on the bank with no hide, is that the ducks get used to where to look. As far as, I mean, most ducks have been shot at. And so when they're wary, I think they're actually looking for an ambush of hunters. And so hunters are normally right around the decoy spread. And so that their eyes kind of get trained and fixed as to kind of where to look a little bit. And when we put ourselves up higher, that's just not a normal area in which the ducks are going to be looking for predators,
Yep.
and for hunters or whatever. And so they're just taking that area for granted as safe.
Yeah,
And
and
so they're
kind of
just not looking there.
to add on that, I mean, we had almost no wind, and when they did finish, they were, or when they're coming on their approach to finish, because we had a lot flare like that, they were literally looking at us in the eyeballs. They're coming straight at us into the decoys, and they were cupped up, locked up for, you know, the last 20 yards before they got into shooting range. And then right at the end, they got close enough to see us, and pop, 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 pop. You heard the wings going, and as fast as they could get out of there, and they were gone. So,
Yeah.
um, that was that.
I wonder what would have happened if it had just been you and Aiden and I. What we would have done. How I'm sure we would have probably set up in those logs. I wonder how much more successful would have been. His girlfriend Jenna and their 6-year-old, they went back to the truck probably about 10. So it was only 4 of us for a good majority of the day. So it probably wouldn't have made that much difference for if it's just the 3 of us.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows at the first light section. But even then, yeah, it was just honestly with the log jam, we kind of had to get in where we could, and we couldn't be like real picky about it because the water, it was really weird with the sandbank there and the creek coming out. It was over our waders right off the shore there. Then it got to the big sandbar where we put all the decoys. So you couldn't get out and walk around the front of the logs and try to like hide in little nooks and crannies. We just had to kind of get in where we could, and so that made it a little bit harder than if we could have hit on it. But yeah, I think every extra person in that situation does make your hide a little bit harder. Um, so who knows? Like you said, who knows?
You know, enjoyable day. I'd say that day was a bit of a disappointment. It was. I had such high expectations going in there from what we saw the night before. And Jim did say that they had gone in and just run the river and flushed them all the night before. So I don't, we talked before, or you and I did, and he didn't do it. We didn't think that he had any fault in any of it, even running the river, trying to see what it looked like and everything. It was just unfortunate if those birds hadn't gotten flushed versus having it just been the 3 of us. We very well may shot over limit. And that's kind of what I was expecting to do. So that wasn't one of the most enjoyable days of the season. It was certainly a unique
Yep.
day and one that I will remember very well. But emotions were it was kind of frustrating day.
Yeah. But I mean, one of these days, I'll get my Kansas Mallards limit. I just got to keep trying.
Yeah, yeah. What and you personally ended up with 3 or 4 birds. You did okay. I mean, on the weekend, you put up about a 4 bird average, so not bad.
Yeah. 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 So I guess let's go ahead and I'm trying to think if there's anything we should talk about before we jump to day two.
I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah. So day two. Well, actually, after that, we did go around and scout and scout and scout. And honestly, after that, it was looking really, really bleak besides the river. And we didn't have
Yeah.
anything scouted on the river. And honestly, I was feeling a little hesitant towards the river just because of how finicky the birds seemed. And, I wouldn't have minded being able to get out in one of the kind of more, well, I shouldn't say more famous Kansas marsh areas. I'm sure the river is pretty well known by hunters in Kansas as well. But for me, when I think of Kansas hunting, I think of all the marsh hunting videos that you put out. And so, for me, I was hoping that we'd get on, be able to find some birds in a marsh. So we went around scouting, and honestly, it was just like nothing. I mean, I don't think we had any leads going into it.
No, we didn't. And I honestly, I would, my motivation was low, and I'm glad we stuck out with that day because we had a fun day. But my motivation was really low after all that. And we couldn't find anything.
Yeah, yeah. If I wasn't there, you probably would have took the day off.
I would have
Yeah,
taken the day off. I would have.
because there, I
I'm
mean,
glad that I'm glad I didn't.
there was nothing. So the next day, we actually decided on going on this little creek system that goes into a marsh, pretty much on the intel of 4 ducks. We're gonna hunt 4 ducks, and so
We saw 4 ducks in this little creek, and it was a beautiful, beautiful creek. And we're like, look, we're just gonna get up late. We're just gonna wander down into this creek. It's beautiful. And I'm like, I'm not even shooting video. I'm just gonna enjoy a sunrise and it's gonna be peaceful. And so that was our plan.
yeah. So I mean, kind of to fast forward through a lot of nothing. We got up there, set up just before shooting light, and it was beautiful. It's what you think of when you think of Kansas duck hunting, minus all the ducks. So I think we
We
saw,
did see all the ducks that we thought were in there.
yeah, we saw 6 ducks flying, and 4 landed upstream of us, and 2 landed downstream of us. And that was the morning. And it was, I think it was like 45 minutes in. Um, 45 minutes in and a bag of combos later, and you're like, all right, let's go ahead and walk out of here. There's literally no movement at all, and so I wasn't opposed to that, and we packed up and um, started scouting again. So again, it was like almost no leads, but we did find one marsh where the birds were holding open some water, and we could see from an observation where we're scouting that there was some geese in it and maybe some ducks. And so we walked down there, and I mean, we flushed them out of there, just to kind of see what was in there. And it was like it was like 100 goldeneye and 12 geese. So, and again, you're really tempted to hunt that one. Actually, you tried to convince me, and I'm like, man, I didn't come to Kansas to shoot goldeneye, which like I guess I was being kind of picky. I'm like, if we're really like, I kind of wanted to find some mallards, and I don't know, was that picky? You think?
No, I don't, because I think that hole was going to be extremely difficult to hide in. Had that hole looked like it was going to be easier, I really would have pushed for it, because I did see some mallards in there, even though you wouldn't believe me. I saw about 15 of them in there. But no, I mean, we had other options, and I was getting a lot more motivated at that time. So I was about ready to say, let's check my favorite hole that I've ever hunted my whole life, my most productive area that I haven't hunted this year. And then if that doesn't work, we'll go to the river. So I felt pretty motivated to keep looking.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we ended up walking down that one, and I don't know how long of a walk it is. Is it like 3/4 of a mile, half a mile?
Yeah, it's about right.
Um, and if you guys, PM Elliot with a little bit of money, I'm sure he'll tell you the exact location.
Actually, this hole, I know people that I like that I won't take to this hole. This is there's a 2 or 3 places that I know of that you will never see unless you're in my inner circle. And this one is number one. Yeah, I've shot more ducks in this hole than any other place in my life. You've seen tons of videos in freelance duck hunting of this place if you watch the videos. And I have not hunted it this year. So we decided that we were going to walk down this trail and just pray that there was a hole in here somewhere. Because I found holes down here before and they're pretty accessible to hunt. So we walked all the way down there. It's a beautiful walk, neat place. Walked all the way down there, and no hole was where I thought it would be. And luckily, we saw some goldeneye kind of fly over on this from off this point. I thought, well, maybe there's a hole right over there. So let's go check that out. So we walked over, and there wasn't a hole there, but there was an area that looked like there had been a hole. And so we looked farther down into the marsh, and there was about 25 swans and some geese down on them. We couldn't tell if they were on the ice or if they had a hole open. But these goldeneye kept flying right up the chute. And by now, Jordan has lost his mallard only purest ways. He's getting a little bit trigger happy. So we're like, well, maybe we can just open up this hole and just shoot some goldeneye or something. But the more
Wait a
we got
minute.
looking,
Wait a minute. First off, you can't call me a purist. We literally talked about stats, and you told me that geese don't count.
hey, where did you get that from?
What do you mean?
You've said that like 3 or 4 times lately. What did I thought? What did I say to make you say that?
That geese don't. You literally said that this weekend.
What do you mean? That geese don't count?
We're talking about numbers of birds shot this season because we're just kind of comparing between you, me, and Elliot and Jimbo. And I just made the joke that how's it feel to be the person with the least number of birds shot this season? Because you shoot a lot of birds. I'm sure that almost never happens. And so I was kind of giving you a little bit of crap on that, and you said geese don't count. And so
I don't even remember saying that because you kept repeating it. And I couldn't remember ever saying that
yeah, so you told me that
because I've
geese.
shot more ducks than you. I said it because I've shot more ducks than you this year.
Yeah, yeah,
You've shot more birds if you include geese,
yeah, but no one counts
but I've
geese.
shot
They're
more
like a
ducks.
pestilence, like a
I know I
a,
didn't say
a
that.
scourge on the earth. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't remember. Okay, I'm glad now that because you kept saying that and I couldn't remember what that was a reference to. Let's just say that Jordan opened up the floodgates this weekend on Talking Trash. Let's just, and it was pretty one-sided endeavor on his part. It got to the point where he was going on so much about me being a skybuster that finally old Jimbo from Minnesota is like, "What? Are you serious? Are you serious?"
is he really a skybuster? Or is this a joke?
You were going so
I'm
strong
like,
about
check
it
his
that he
gun. It's an
finally had to
extended
stop
full
you.
range joke.
Turns out old Jimbo's way more of a skybuster than me. No. Jimbo, if you're listening, I know you're not a skybuster. I'm just giving you a hard time over there. He did actually contact me on Instagram.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he wants some footage from up top of the bank up there, which there is some cool footage
awesome.
from up there. All right, so take her away.
Yeah. So yeah, once we got in there, like Elliot was saying, we had Goldeneye buzzing around. And the weird thing was they kept trying to go land in these holes, and you could see where the ice was thick, and it was probably about 2.5 inches thick. And then you could see where it was like super thin. Like we're talking like it probably froze that night, where birds just didn't keep it open that had been keeping it open. So these goldeneye kept trying to land in these holes. So I went to the first one, started breaking it open, and then Elliot's like, "Man, I really think we should walk down to this other hole and check it out." I'm like, "I don't know, man. The goldeneye keep trying to land in here," and he's like, "Well, how about you?" You keep breaking open the hole, and I'll walk down there and give it a look. And at this point, I'm like, well, if he's gonna do that, I'm gonna end up opening this whole hole, and then he's gonna come back and say that we're gonna hunt the other one. So I'm like, well, I might as well just jump out of here because I knew how it was gonna go at that point. So I followed you down there, and sure enough, mallards in that hole, golden eye, maybe some other divers from what we saw, and I don't know how many geese were in there, 20, 30 geese, and
Yeah,
about
there was more waterfowl in there than what we had even thought by far. Way more ducks
yeah,
than what we expected, and the swans in there. That was really cool. A bunch of swans in there.
yeah. So yeah, long story short, we decided to set up on that hole, and yeah, I mean it was pretty unique because honestly I was a little nervous walking across that ice, but through these marshes it's just not as deep as you might think. Um, so we went up and set up on that. But do you want to go ahead and talk about the blind we had?
Yeah, and with this particular marsh, I have spent so much time in this place, turkey hunting, just hiking around, waterfowl hunting. I started hunting this place, I think, around 2009. So I've only been hunting it about 10, 11 years. I've got 34 hunts in here, shot 123 ducks. So, I mean, this place, I know every single inch of this section, and I knew none of it was over our head. So that gave me a lot of comfort and that we could just walk on the ice and because I just know the place. So this hole it was a much bigger hole than we thought as well. And the problem is I mean this was right out in the middle of the marsh. So there's absolutely nothing that you could get covered up with. But I was now just loving what we were doing because we were in the middle of, and I tried to share these thoughts with Jordan while we were there too. Um, we were in the middle of my favorite place to be out in nature in the whole world. And it was all ice except this hole. It felt really, really isolated down there. I mean, it's like we were the only people. It felt like kind of like being on the moon. I mean, it was just completely ours. And I just love being down in this section in this area so much that I didn't want to leave. And I didn't really think we had a very good chance because, first of all, I mean, that we probably only flushed 20, 25 mallards off this hole and a few more than that, goldeneye and hooded merganser. But I mean, when you're talking two guys and a dog just laying out on bare ice over an ice hole, I've tried that before and I really didn't think that we were going to be very successful. So what we decided we're going to try to do is go into the woods, and there's lots of from the flooding. There's lots of light trees and brush just laying around. So we took two trips and pulled a bunch of brush out. And actually, if you want to see a picture of this, it's actually the thumbnail of today's podcast. Also, I put some pictures on Fellowship of the Duck Gun, which is our Facebook group. If you want to see a little bit more what it looked like. And I was going to set it up to where we had like brush in between us, like brush person, brush dog. But Jordan's like, well, let's just set it up in a V and we'll all be in the middle of it, which worked perfectly. So we set up all this brush in a V. And then Jordan and I just laid side by side with Chief behind us. I mean, as far as hide goes for mallards, not very good. But at that point, we were just like, if we can shoot maybe a couple hooded mergansers each or a golden eye or just a one bird each. We're just going to lay in here. I'm like, let's just lay in here for 4 hours, enjoy being all alone. That sounded kind of weird. So now we're laying beside each other. But you know what I mean? Just enjoy the last day in peace and see what happens. So that's what we did.
Yeah, it was honestly, it was kind of. I do give some of the credit to that design of the blind, which I'm gonna remember that for future hunts. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever have this come up again where I can hide on an ice hole, but it's like you said, the construction of it with the V setup, we could put Chief right in the crook of it, and he's brown. Mm-hmm. He matched the branches perfect. We're all in our we're all wearing the banded waders and jacket, and we really matched the brush pretty well as well. And then we just had the logs going on either side of us. We were shoulder to shoulder, and then we took the last branch and pulled it up over our feet. So I mean, honestly, like you said, it seemed like we're pretty bare, but to the birds, I mean, it worked. We really didn't have birds flaring on us.
No, not a one. Not a one out of the very few that came in.
Yeah, so we didn't have very many chances, but I mean, we were both surprised it worked. And the first group that comes in, and the one thing that was difficult about it is when you're just laying down on the ice, you can't really see the hole very well, and they're coming over our left shoulder, and we had some birds circling around us, and I think there were some goldeneye, maybe some hooded mergansers, and all I hear is a splash. And so I look in the decoys, and some had already landed. So we had 3 in the decoys and some more working. And so I'm like, we got some in the set. And you're like, how many? And I'm like, 3. All right, let's take them. So we both sit up as fast as we can. And I popped the hooded merganser in, and I left the drake up to you. And
I whiffed 0 for 3. 0 for 3.
Your comment was that your subconscious wouldn't let you shoot a hooded merganser.
Yeah, I think what it was is I was out because they were just sitting on the water, and I bared down on the closest one, which was a hen, and we're actually trying to get them to flush. And right before they flushed, I decided, well, there's the drake. Why don't I go for the drake? So I went over to the drake, and I was kind of swinging to the left right as they flushed, and so I think that's my excuse. That's my excuse.
Yeah, which the odd thing about that is we have hooded mergansers, which nobody likes to shoot, but I mean we got to do our due diligence for the trout. And then if you're gonna shoot one, you want to shoot the drake, and somehow both of us pick the hen on either side, and no one's shooting at the drake. So, yeah.
But we were pretty excited because we didn't know if we were going to get any action, and And so we had a bird, so we were pretty happy with that.
Oh yeah, we're definitely glad, and we couldn't believe. I mean, we just pretty much accounted it to the stupidity of a merganser. And honestly, I'm not sure how wary they are anyway. Regardless, I mean, I only shoot, I don't know, 4 to 6 of them a year, so it's not like I got a good sample size on how wary a hooded merganser is. But yeah, that was that. And then next thing we know, we're sitting there and we have a group of divers come right over top, and I just remember the wings just, the jet-like noise as they flew right over us. And I don't even know if we called at all. I think we just laid back down, or you were already laying down. And I was actually sitting up, and I laid back down in the crook real quick when I saw them coming. And they just did like a figure eight. They flew from our right side. They did a circle around the far side of the hole to the left and back to the right, and then they swung right over the decoys. And we both shot one, and we split on one as well. So we got 3 down, and they were all bluebill. So that was really cool, shooting those bluebill over an ice hole out in the marsh.
Yeah, and I have not. I love bluebills, and I hadn't shot one since I think 2007 or 2008. So I had been on a real cold streak. When they came from our right to our left, and they were going away, you've got that feeling where you're always reminded, like, come on, turn, turn, turn. And man, they turned, and they just. And you guys have all seen it when you've got divers 5 feet off the water coming straight at you. That feeling, and they're just coming, and then they just swung perfect right to the decoys. Right, I mean, you couldn't have asked for, other than landing, you could not have asked for a better flight path. And somehow Jordan shot at the first one and didn't know that he killed it. I don't know how he does that. And then he tries to call a split on the first one that I killed, and then finally I killed the third one. So have you looked at that footage yet on that pass?
I have not yet.
Yeah, I don't. You don't want to, because I'm pretty sure I killed it. But man, I was so excited at that point because hadn't shot a bluebill in a while. Just the perfect decoy. We killed 3 of there's probably 5 or 6. We killed 3 of the 6, and so at that point, I'm like, hey, if nothing else happens today, I am happy because that was so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. And like you said, right off the water, coming right at us. So yeah, but even then, the next one kind of one upped it for me. Um, we're just laying there. We have some mallards working, and
I think it was just a hen working. I had you seen the drake?
well, I'm assuming because I'd looked at the decoys, not too long before that. I'm assuming that he worked in while we were watching the hen because the hen was
Oh yeah, for
circling us.
sure.
I mean, she just cupped in straight out of the atmosphere, and I mean, cupped up hard, just coming down like a rock with wings locked the whole way, and she swang right over top of us. And like I said, I mean, we almost feel just naked out there with the amount of cover we have, hiding, literally laying on the ice with these branches just um, built around us. And she comes straight overhead, circling behind us, and lets out a quack, And I think
Hmm.
you'd called, and so she was calling back to you at like the same exact time, um, and just giving out a quack. And she circled, and then she went out in front of us. And at that point, um, you noticed the the drake out in the decoys, and you sat up, and I was still just watching the hen. But when you sat up, I'm like, well, he must be seeing something that I didn't, because I thought we were waiting for the hen, but you saw the drake, and so I sat up with you. And at that point, he picked up out of the decoys and started to fly, kind of behind us and left, or towards like a. I don't know how to explain it. He was in front of us, but he was flying back and left. So it took away your shot because I was sitting up, and so I had to pull up real quick and get on it. And by then it was getting out of there, and I just had time to
Yeah.
crack one shot off and um, just folded it right there. And I mean that, I don't know, it's just something about hunting mallards, and I mean that's why we all love duck hunting, and um, that feeling, because that was such a good feeling when I see that bird pick
Yeah.
up, and watching that that hen cup up all the way around, and taking the one shot and watching it just crumple. I don't know what it is exactly, but it was just like a perfect feeling.
Well, part of it is expectation because our expectations were really low to start the day. Then we're in this hole and we're like, maybe if we can shoot one or two birds each, then we shoot, trashy little hooded merganser. Then we have this awesome passive bluebill in. Nothing's flaring us. And now once you get a mallard to finish, you're like, oh my gosh, this is actually working.
Yeah.
I mean, we finished a mallard. And then you make because the thing that's so hard about that shot of yours is he wasn't just going to the left, he was like going towards your back left shoulder. So on the ice, you had to twist to where you're kind of, if I think, shooting behind your left shoulder just a little bit. And it was getting out there, and I didn't. It was a tough shot, and you just folded him up. And so now we've got three bluebills, we've got a mallard, we've exceeded our expectations at this point in time, and we're just laying here on the ice. You, Chief, and I cracking jokes. The sun is. It had been all foggy. The sun's starting to come out. No one's around for miles, so it was just like the elation on, man, this is really, really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if we got it on footage there or not, but I can't remember which time it was, if it was that time or another time. But when we would sit up on the ice, like we were literally melting a hole in it. Um,
Yeah.
and the sun's coming out too and helping us because it was getting into the 40s that day. But it was just like all steamy, and we kept making a joke that like we were gonna melt a hole through the ice, and just at one point we're gonna fall all the way through. And I mean, I think we would have if we didn't move. And so periodically, we'd have to scoot all the sticks over and all this, our blind bags and guns over, 5 feet to the left. We kept doing that. I think we did that 3 or 4 times because
Yeah.
we create this big water hole. And like I said, I mean, the ice was 2.5 inches, maybe 2 inches thick. And, I'm like, all we got to do is get it thin enough that it loses like structural stability. And, we just fall right through. And you, me, and Chief all sitting at the same spot. I mean, it wouldn't have took much more melting to get, when you're at a half inch or an inch. I don't know what it would have been, but it would have been pretty funny if that actually happened.
Yeah, and another really interesting thing about this hunt, the water was about thigh deep to waist deep. And so Chief was feeling very unstable on the ice because sometimes as you'd be walking, it'd be cracking a little bit. And every time it'd crack, I'd see him just kind of like freeze and tense up and everything. And I don't, Chief's kind of like Izzy. He doesn't really care for the ice that much. So on the retrieves, you had to kind of force Chief out to go and get out there. And sometimes we would end up like you would go out into the water or I would. But every time we would get into the water, it's like, okay, how do you go about doing this? So our first idea was you just kind of stand on the edge and let the ice break under you. But that is a really unstable feeling. To
Yeah.
just, you know that it's not that deep, but the ice goes and your feet are slipping and you're off balance as you hit the ground. And I know when we tried that, both of us, when we hit the ground on the first couple of attempts, almost just wiped out.
Yeah. Well, my first attempt was on accident because um, I was helping Chief into the water to get the birds, and the ice just broke around both of us, and we just both fell through. And I luckily kept my balance. And then the next time, I'm like, all right, I'm going to get to the edge and jump. And as soon as I put all my weight on the ice to push off of it and lean forward, then the ice broke, and I'm leaning forward, so I almost, just toppled face first into the water. Luckily, that didn't happen either. But yeah, and then getting out was no easier either, because I mean the ice was thin around the hole. You could just break it just by putting your weight on it. So you had to break it a few times just to get to the thicker ice to get in and out. So
Yeah. I even tried a dive slide onto the ice coming out, which didn't work, didn't feel very good when I did it. And I will say one more time, guys, I know this marsh like the back of my hand. I know how deep it is. I've walked every part of it. We tested it out with sticks before we got down initially. I would never ever promote doing this in these kind of conditions if you don't know the depth and you hadn't been in there. So I felt completely comfortable in my surroundings, but ice is not something you want to mess with. And just letting yourself fall into ice, some of this stuff could be dangerous unless you really have a lot of knowledge of it.
yep. So yeah, I guess to cap off the hunt, we did have one more pair work in. and they worked us and called and worked us, and I could tell kind of a long way into it they wanted to land on the other side, and I think it was because Chief was moving around. At that point, he wasn't really having sitting on the ice. He's all covered in water. He kept licking his paws and licking. So if I had him steady or had him in a blind or something, but that all goes to the ice and our setup. But they ended up landing, so they didn't. It wasn't enough to flare him off there, but they didn't necessarily want to land with the decoys, and so I actually held him by his collar so that he'd lay down behind us. And you kept calling, and they eventually felt like forever, but they eventually swam in there, and I kept talking to you. I couldn't see them the way they were. They were just like directly in front of me, and so it's like my body was in the way because my head's down on the ice. And they eventually swam in. But the whole time I kept asking you how far, and I knew Chief, as soon as I'd let go and I'd have to grab my gun, was gonna he was gonna sit up and start licking his paws again, and they were gonna spook, or that's what I was worried about. And so, I mean, sure enough, I think we had some kind of miscommunication because I thought they were gonna be close enough for us to shoot, and they were, but they were kind of on the far extent of that, and so I let Chief up to grab my gun, and then they started to swim away, and so you had to call the shot. And so we both took one shot and both
Yeah.
killed both of them. So all in all, definitely a really fun hunt. Yeah.
Part of it I thought was a really unique, fun part as well because they landed about 150 yards from us. And what do you think? It was about 10, 15 minutes for him to swim over, something like that?
Yeah.
Is that, I'd say that's probably about right.
Yep.
But so Jordan can't see him. So I'm constantly giving him updates like, okay, it looks like they're swimming towards us. All right, now the hen's swimming away and the drake's kind of circling her. Now he's bobbing his head. I think he's courting her. It's like every little play by play. All right, now and when they decided, I was quietly, carefully given some quacks, and it did actually seem to help, especially with the drake. And at one point in time, they had split up where the hen had gone far away. Then they joined up and they started swimming like a lot faster right towards us. And I was hoping to let clear into the spinner, but they got just inside a shotgun range. And Jordan was whispering something to me about putting his hand on his gun. I wasn't sure what that was. But what I thought you were saying is before we shoot, let me know so I can get my hand on my gun. Was what I thought you said. But they, right when they got inside a shotgun range, they turned and started swimming away. And I'm like, I don't want to take the chance to see if they come back in. I want to make sure we get a shot at this. So, and when we pulled up, actually they had crossed to where they were like, you could have killed two with one shot. And so we focused both of our shots right on that little pop. In fact, after I was done, I wasn't even sure who shot the drake and who shot the hen. And looking back on it, I think that I took a shot at both of them right on the ground. I think the drake started to fly and Jordan shot right after me and cleaned him up. Is the way I think. That whole sequence of the play-by-play and waiting them to swim in, the male was courting the female, and that was really unique and fun as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely pretty cool, and they're going to be the last ducks we see for a long time.
Yep. So we ended with 3 mallards, 3 bluebills, and a hooded merganser. And when we went to set up in there, man, I would have sworn we weren't going to shoot that
Yeah.
amount of birds. I mean, I would, like I said, we were hoping for a bird each or something. Our expectations were super low, so we were really pumped by how that ended up.
Oh yeah. No, definitely was super excited about it, and yeah, it's like you said, it's so weird how expectations can kind of dictate how you feel about a hunt. And we just had no expectations, and when that kind of happened, and seeing those birds cup in right into the ice hole on such a unique hunt, and I mean, we had such a great time doing it too. So it's just, you know, it was just a great way to kind of cap off the whole season.
Never hunted just the two of us, and just for 4 hours, it might have been 4.5 hours, just laying on that ice and that little wood thing with Chief behind us and having some snacks and shooting a bird here and there. One of the most enjoyable hunts of the season for me.
Yep.
Absolutely one of the most enjoyable. Just loved it.
Awesome. Yep. So yeah, no, that I mean that pretty much wraps up the Kansas hunts there, and I was definitely glad that I made the trip out there, and it's so much fun. So, and luckily, I've learned from the past too to take off Sunday or Monday as well, so that when we hunt on Sunday, I don't have time constraints where I got to be back, or else that probably wouldn't have happened. Um, and then too, I don't kill myself on the drive home when you only slept for 2 hours the night before, and then try to take a 10-hour drive home. It's pretty un unadvised, I'd say.
I have finally recovered sleep wise from that weekend. Monday after work, I slept for about 2 hours on the couch, like from 6 to 8. Yesterday, I slept for about an hour and a half after work. I mean, I'm just now catching up. That's why whenever I'm going to do, um, other than teal season's different because I'm so refreshed and hunting's just started, so I can do a Saturday and a Sunday where you're really hitting it hard. Well, I guess in teal hunting too are so quick hunts normally. But if I'm gonna do like those all day hunts 2 days in a row, I've got to have a day off or it just wrecks me.
Yep, I agree with you on that. So, but I still got a week and a half of goose to look forward to. I know you're not certain if you'll get out again. But yeah, I think we definitely need to have a episode kind of concluding our seasons here in a couple weeks once we're both all the way done. Um, but yeah, it's definitely been a fun ride this season. I don't want to go in too many of the details, but man, it's just been from start to finish. It's been awesome.
From last year is night and day. I mean, you struggled so much last year, and this year you had such a good year that had to be really kind of redemption for you as well.
Yep, yep, definitely was. So yeah, I guess I don't know where to end this one now. Kind of wrapping up the hunts, but kind of like I said in the beginning, it was just it was awesome to hang out with you, and I see you as somewhat of a mentor for me, being a lot of a newer waterfowl hunter compared to you, and you got your years of experience, and I know I'm hard headed, and and I feel like sometimes when we're out there, I kind of want to do it a certain way, but it's always nice to kind of have somebody out there who has more experience with you. And I really enjoyed having our dual hunt, whatever you want to call it, where it was just us. Because there's a lot that I can learn from hunting with you.
I feel the same way, and the fact that we've done this podcast together and we're hunting together so much, I certainly hope that your trips to Kansas continue more than just once a year because I really enjoy it as well.
Awesome. I do as well. So let's wrap this bromance up and the podcast up. But thanks everybody for tuning in for another episode. Like I said, we're gonna do a wrap up podcast here in a couple weeks. Elliot, what are your chances on getting another goose hunt?
One more, hopefully on Corn's Pond, but I'm tired and I need some time. So I'm hoping that the last weekend I can get out one time.
Awesome. Yeah, I got 2 more weekends, and I don't know how much I want to push it. I know getting to the end of the season, one of my goals, and it's a silly goal to have, maybe kind of it feels silly to say it out loud, is to hunt 50 days. And I know that it's at the end of the season. I'm tired too. I've hunted a lot. I know both of our wives are probably tired of us going and being gone all the time too. So I don't know how much I want to push it going at the end of the season. But we got so many geese around, and I know that in a couple weeks when all the season's done, that I'm gonna wish I was out. I'd hunted and got. I want to just make sure I get one more goose hunt that's a good goose hunt on the year. But even then, 2 weeks away, I'll be like, oh man, I'm missing the hunting already. So I guess we're at that
Yeah.
time of the year. But anyways, I think right now is probably a perfect time to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thanks, fellas, for joining us for another episode of the Duck Gun Podcast. We really appreciate it. I'm Jordan, Duck Gun Chronicles, Elliot from Freelance Duck Hunting, and we'll see you guys on the next one. All right, YouTube gang, thanks for hanging in there. The chat's been going off crazy. I've been trying to read it as we go along here and there without getting too distracted, but